hate getting in front of it.
We'll do great.
Okay, such a big audience.
A big audience.
Just today we have Jody Jenkins here of Killick Inspections and Jeff Petit of Radon Technologies, and we're going to talk about home inspections and radon inspections, and this will be taped for YouTube. Okay, Jody, you want to start?
Sure. See me in there. All right, guys, so what I've got for you today is what I call it the Visual Keys Seminar. So all it is a bunch of pictures, just things that I think that you guys can look at as inspectors, not as inspectors, but as realtors. You can look at while you're on listings or if you're doing viewing, something that you guys can look at for yourselves. You don't have to get a surprise later on when an inspector comes through and finds things for you. So it's not the intention to make you into an inspector. Stay in whatever comfort zone you're in when you're actually looking at things yourself, but there are certain things that you can see for yourself, like ages of things and that sort of thing that you can tell your clients. So I'm just going to run down through a few things with you really quick here, if I can get it to work.
No, better than last week.
Yeah.
Is that okay?
That's awesome.
Oh, really? Okay. Awesome.
Jen, you can see that fine? Everything's good? Perfect. Thanks.
All right, so quickly, just about oil tanks. Everyone knows, obviously, this is an oil tank. You'll find them either metal or fiberglass. You're not expected to know all the ins and outs and the gauges and double bottom and all that kind of stuff, but for the most part, you can at least find the tag and find the date on it. So you can see the little date right here. It's nice to at least know that. When you're talking to insurance companies, you're going to get a wide range of what they allow anyway, so it's just good to have a date so you at least have a starting point, really. For your oil line, the first one is a bare copper line with no shield. The bottom one has the orange protect, has the looping, has the shield. That's the one that you're looking for. If you find one like this, chances are insurance won't be happy with that. That'll have to be updated.
What about a pan under those tanks?
That'd be wonderful.
That's not
For new installations it is, but when you're going
Okay.
into someone's home, you know, you don't call out it not being there, but it's a great idea for sure. And it's kind of the standard now, like most companies will do it.
Most insurance companies for years.
Oh,
now,
yeah. They always want it, but
Yeah.
when you're talking insurance, with a lot of these things, when you're talking about insurance, there's a wide range, and depending on which company you talk to, you call another company, you'll get different answers and questions anyway. So, like I said, none of this is written in stone. It's more or less just know what you're getting and be prepared for what the insurance might give you. For your vent and fill pipes, vent and fill pipes aren't supposed to be the same size. The one that you fill is supposed to be lower than the one that's the vent pipe, the high one here. So these ones here would be called out. Again, not a big deal. This is something that can be easily, they're threaded so they can be easily changed. They're just screwed out. But if this would be a thing that if I saw this, I'd mention this to the homeowner, this is what you want to see. Wood stoves. No one expects you to go measuring wood stoves and you know, looking for all the information on that. Only thing I would tell you with a wood stove, if there's a wood stove in the home, just look on the back and see if you can find a tag. If you can find a certification tag on the back of there, you know you have a certified stove. Now someone like myself would come in and do the proper measurements and make sure that what you have is okay. If you can't find a tag, then you have to go by what's called non-certified measurements. Now your measurements are crazy. They're like 4 feet in every direction. Chances are if you can't find a tag, there's a very good chance that your stove won't comply with wet certification.
And that tag doesn't have anything to do with wet certification?
No,
Right.
this tag, essentially this tag is the Bible for
CSA.
this stove.
Right.
So you can't look at this tag and say, this tag will work for another stove, or this is a big stove, it has big measurements, the next one's a small stove, it has small, it doesn't work like that at all. They're all done by the different companies that do them.
Okay.
And there's different certification bodies, so they're all kind of all over the map. So you can't go by that, other than, like I said, if you look at a tag, at least you know that you have a certified stove, and then we can go from there.
Okay.
And again, none of that, you don't have to do any of these things if you're not comfortable with any of this. I don't expect you to do it. It's just if you want to take a little, you know,
I know.
peek behind and say, yeah, I see a tag, I think we're okay, we'll just get it certified.
Okay.
If you don't see a tag, just you can sort of prepare people, hey guys, chances are this is going to have to be taken out. It's gonna need clearances that are most likely not in a regular home.
Yeah.
If you're in like a unfinished concrete basement, you have wide clearances everywhere, that's different. But in a rec room or something, usually you don't have enough clearance for a non-certified stove. Chimneys. No one's expecting you to climb up on a roof, but from the ground you can quite often see a chimney, and it's just about the size of it. If you just look at one and it looks stubby and small, it's going to be too short. There's a rule called the 3-2-10 rule, and you don't have to remember this, but what that means is the chimney is supposed to be at least 3 feet high where it comes out of the roof line, and if you come down from the top 2 feet, you should be able to go out in any direction 10 feet and not hit anything. This one here is not even 2 feet in total. So if you see one that looks stubby, chances are it's going to have to be changed. And again, you're just eyeballing it from the ground, so it's just something to just have conversation about maybe.
I have a question about that.
Yes.
I had a home that had multiple roofs.
Yep.
It was very unique layout, and they couldn't get insurance because the chimney was not tall enough, but it was already like 10 feet. But because of the different.
Yeah, there's, I don't know what you do after 10, if you're talking about a metal chimney.
Yes.
So
yeah.
for a metal chimney, it's the 3-2-10 rule.
Yeah.
Once it gets more than 5 feet above where it goes from the roof line, now you need the brackets, those metal braces.
Okay.
If it gets to 10 feet, you need a second set of metal braces.
Okay.
I've never seen one that would need three set of metal braces, so I don't know. That might be a trickier one. That sounds like a unique example. But usually that's what it is they do get high enough that you can need a second set of brackets if because of the weird steepness of
So
weird
the brackets
architecture.
is what there's- okay.
Yeah, but it's still possibly a thing that can be dealt with. But there's a certain height that after a certain point, getting into the weeds, but after you get to a certain height, you no longer have the right airflow in a chimney anyway. So
Right.
it might not be functional where it is.
Okay.
And that's definitely a unique
Yeah.
unique experience for sure. Electrical panel. Easy way, everyone's always looking for what the main amperage for the house is. When you look at your typical panel, it's either up like this or sometimes it's on its side. You'll have one breaker off on its own, and that breaker will usually say, actually on the breaker, 100, 125, or 200, and that's the amperage for your house. And you don't have to, again, go into the whole deal, but if you want to know what you have, 100, 125, and 200 is typical.
So that one looks like it could be just a single, but sometimes you get two that are up there that say 100 and 100. Can you explain that?
If that would be a double pole, it's still just 100.
It's still just 100.
So we're getting into the whole thing again, but it's all about currents and how much voltage and all that, but mostly just a matter of, as a general rule, if you have oil as your main source of heat, or propane or natural gas or whatever, quite often you'll get 100 or 125. Right. If you have electric as your main source of heat, it's just pulling more, you'll get 200. Mm-hmm. So people are always looking, do I have 100, 125, or 200? What you don't want to see is as a 60. 60 is not enough. If you have a big house that's all electric and you only have 100, that's probably not enough. But
yeah.
And again, you're not expected to calculate all that. It's just you can take a quick peek and say, yeah, we got 125 amp service here, and then move on, kind of thing.
I always go by looking at what that is, seeing how many pieces that are left open that they can pop out.
Yeah.
More. And that's when you know, okay, it's not full at least.
That's usually a good indication,
yeah.
But it's more about, it's the same. Like you could have empty breakers, but let's say you have a hot tub and you have downstairs has another stove and a second dryer and stuff. You're not using a lot of breakers, but you're using a lot of amperage.
Yeah.
So it ends up being that you have empty spaces, but they can't be used.
Be filled. I
Right,
gotcha.
so-
Okay, that's good to know.
Yeah. So, but generally speaking, you're right though. If you have spaces on the bottom, it's a pretty good chance that you do have a little bit of flex. So.
Okay.
Joe, did you have another handout I can have?
Yeah.
I'm finding this quite interesting.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, grab one for sure. Thanks. And by the way, with a lot of this, there's always exceptions to everything. It is possible that we could look and see something that looks like it's completely wrong. By the time we take a panel off, we look inside, no, it's actually fine and stuff. But just as a general, it's just things that you would most likely be able to check for yourself and be able to tell people. Here's a fun one.
Oh, this is our favorite.
Yeah, so high-tech piping. So Now there's, Kitech is the big one that everyone knows. It's pretty obvious because it's bright orange. It says Kitech in big letters. It says IPEX in big letters. That's the company that manufactures Kitech. There's a handful of other ones, Aquipex, Curve, Plum Better, all these ones that, again, you're not expected to know all these things, but this is the easy one that most people can spot right away and just immediately call out. If you see this one, just be heads up that it's potentially an issue. We've had, actually Vicki and I had this discussion just yesterday, how some insurance companies are fine with it, some are not. It's about your personal threshold, really. Are you okay with it? Are your insurance okay with it?
And it's more about the fittings versus the actual.
Typically it's the fittings. There have been times when I've seen photos of this where it's actually busted in the middle like a garden hose,
Yep,
busting,
yep.
and it spreads out. But it's almost always the fittings.
Okay.
It's always your weak points would be your
Right.
fittings, right? So that would be anything really. So if you see it, you can mention it, but if you're not comfortable looking for the other brands and stuff, don't put yourself in a position where you've made people angry. A separate kind of piping, if you want here, this is like a bluish gray kind with a bunch of copper fittings. This is poly-bead, this is polybeadline piping. If your house is built in the 70s, early 80s, if your house is on hot water boiler system, then this is a potential issue. If your house is built in 92 and you have electric baseboard, this is actually still pretty common. This is a newer generation stuff, but some insurance companies will hear the word poly-B and they'll still have an issue with it. So just a heads up, if you see that, if you're comfortable looking at it, and it actually does say on there poly-B line, and in brackets it'll say poly-B, actually just like what I have here.
Okay.
If you see that, that's something again. By the way, any of this stuff, if you're ever looking at any of these things and you're curious, you're not quite sure you see what you think you see, take a photo. If you don't, I don't mind, if you don't mind, take a photo of it, send it to me and say, hey, what am I looking at? And I'll be able to tell you from the photo what you have if you're not comfortable just guessing on your own. People are always looking for the age of stuff. This is a great way to find out the age of the house. Right on your electrical panel here, there's a home warranty sticker. Not always, but quite often there is, and that'll actually tell you the date. Over here it's cut off, but there's an occupancy permit. That'll also have a date on it. So if you're wondering, hey, is my house 1986 or 89? Look on that, it'll actually tell you the date of when they give you the home warranty. Then you'll be able to go and say, yes, my house is a 1986 house, and off we go.
Huh.
I'm sure you guys have come across houses that are listed as 1987, but really they're 1985 or whatever.
Yeah.
This will tell you right there.
Oh, good to know.
And I think probably what it is all the material in the house would be branded and manufactured in 1985, but by the time they built the place, by the time they sold it, by the time somebody actually moved in, it's a couple of years later, and now they call it a year that's really not. Everything still continues to age. So even though no one's lived in there, the house is still 2 years old, and you go from there kind of thing. Down below that, here's another option you can use. If you're looking at a house from, let's say, back again in the 80s or 90s, your sticker here, your electrical sticker on the side of your meter, that'll be signed off by Nova Scotia Power. This is when the house would have become weather tight. So that also might say June 6, 1991.
So when they change out those front dials with all the new stuff going on, they don't touch the box itself?
Depends. This is where we get to the second thing. If this sticker says June 5th, 1999, and this house is clearly from the 70s, all this is telling you is when did they take out the fuses and when did they actually upgrade the meter.
Gotcha.
So at least now you have a date of when your electrical
was
done.
updated. Okay.
Because insurance will ask that sometimes too, like how old, your house is 1972, how old is your electrical? Oh, my house is 1972, but my electrical is 1999.
Perfect.
So that's another, just a little place you can usually find. It's on the side of most panels. Anything that's been, for sure from the 90s onward, you'll get a sticker on there. Oh, I've got some chat. Oh, Lynette, if you have 100 amps, should be 125 if oil would heat, 100 would be okay for insurance. Both would be fine, Lynette. It depends on, again, the house and the calculation. Typically, there's a calculation done in the beginning. You'll either get 100 or 125, depending on what's expected to be in the house, the square footage of the house, that sort of thing. But honestly, 100 and 125 is not that big of a difference. It's the jump to 200 for the electrical is what you're really looking at. That makes more sense. You're welcome. All right, here's another place you can find ages of things. If you have OSB chipboard in your house, if you're in the basement, let's say, and you look up at the floor, there's a stamp on there. So you have a date stamp. This one here says, I think, September something, 2016. But you can look at those, so that would be your floor of your house. So if you're looking from the basement, looking up at the bottom of the floor, you'll actually see the date of when things are manufactured as well. Sometimes I'll go into like a detached garage and everything's bare, so you can say, okay, the house was built in 1984, but this garage is 6 years old, and here's the date, I can show you.
Oh.
And that's another way you can find things. And it might not be visible on every house, but that's something that if you see this open, you'll find the stamp. Lots of information here, including the date.
A sleuth.
Yeah, you gotta do a little detective work sometimes, right? So things like that, again, you don't have to do, and like I said, any of this. It's just if you want to be a little more engaged and involved, and you're able to go in. And I find that people like dealing with people who seem to know their stuff. And if you walk into to do a listing and say, oh yeah, this house is such and such, you go into their garage and say, oh, I see your garage is only 6 years old, and how do you know that? Well, you're showing them little tidbits, and people like people who are clever. Windows. So broken thermopane seals, pretty common. You can see here the frosties type stuff here. As a general rule, if your window looks like it's glazed, if it's frosty looking or foggy looking, then the pane is gone. There's nothing you can do for it. If it still looks wet, if it's sort of damp in there, it is possible to actually repair it rather than replace it, but that's again a personal thing. Do you want to just get rid of it entirely, or do you want a company to come in and actually do the gas thing? It's up to you, but those are the differences. If it's still wet, it's salvageable as a general rule. If it's frosty and foggy looking, then the pane is just shot. All right. So now we're looking at a little bit of an older house. This is asbestos insulation on an old pipe, an old baseboard pipe. This very much looks like when, maybe not so much now, but when we were kids, if you had a broken arm, you'd actually get a plaster cast on your arm. It very much looks like a plaster cast. So if you see any of that, you don't rub it, you don't touch it, you just say, hey, chances are that's asbestos, let's leave it, let's get it tested. Next one. Chances are you will not be in an attic, especially anything that needs to get on a ladder, but there are some old houses where you can actually open side doors and just stick your head in and see sides of like a 1.5-story house, that sort of thing. If you see insulation that looks like shiny rocks, that's vermiculite. And vermiculite has a better than an average chance of being asbestos. It's about a 75% chance of being asbestos. So same thing. If you see what looks like shiny rocks as your insulation, don't touch it, don't disturb it. Take a picture of it maybe, send it to me if you like, but that would need to be tested by like an asbestos abatement team just to see. If it turns out that it's not, if you're one of the lucky 25% or so, they usually give you a certificate saying that you're clear. Vermiculite is actually a pretty good insulator, so if it's not asbestos, leave it. It actually does a pretty good job. If it has asbestos, obviously, then you got to go the next step and have it remediated. Next one, crack repair. So foundations, every foundation will have some sort of crack. Usually they're hairline, usually they're straight, they're not usually a big deal. If you do find one in any, doesn't have to be diagonal, but if you do find anyone that has these pins in it, those are injection sites. If you see that, that's a pro job. That wasn't just somebody and their brother come over and patched it up. Somebody who knows what they're doing did that. So if you find one like that, you go the next step and ask for the documentation. We need receipts, warranties, was it permacrete, wisecracks, who did it, can we get it transferred to the next person? Seeing that is not something scary. That actually means that you had a problem that was resolved. Just make sure you get the documentation so that if you have a buyer, let's say, that they're covered going forward. So vegetation, any kind of vines, any kind of trees, anything up against the house is never a great idea. In this case, I didn't put the photo, I wish I did, but this one here, I was showing the client that this one was actually going up under the siding. By the time I got to the house, it had grown all the way up and was in the attic.
Oh.
So that goes all the way up 2 stories into an attic. It was bananas. So, but what that's doing, of course, it's not only tearing and damaging your siding and your material inside, it's a great place for moisture to enter. It allows vermin to get in and insects, they come all in through your house. So it's never great to have anything up against your house anyway. This one here was pretty crazy. Neither you or I are expected to be exterminators, but if you come across lots of little poo, you might want to, that's all little poo. So if you find any of that, whether it's in a basement or an attic or wherever you see it, same deal, next step is to get an
I
exterminator.
run.
Yeah, or you can run.
Yeah.
Yeah, that one was pretty crazy too.
I always warn my clients, if I see something, I'm going to run.
All right. All right, and last one here. Can you tell me what you think is wrong with this photo? Any guesses?
I don't know, the dog pees up against it.
That dog used to be alive. That is somebody's taxidermied pet.
Oh dear.
Oh my God, damn it.
I've seen it twice. Where you go
Oh my God.
I've always threatened, honestly, my husband, I was gonna do that, and my kids, and they all think I'm crazy, so I didn't do it.
Well, I'm not saying you're not crazy, but you're not alone. So-
How realistic was it?
It was a real dog. I thought it.
Oh my God, I can't even imagine.
It was looking at me like I couldn't believe how still it was, and then you see the pictures in the house, like holding the real dog when it was alive. So this is what the reason I put that. And not this one's kind of funny, but the lady I was with was not amused at all. She was very upset that somebody had taxidermied this pet. So the point I would make for this, I'm getting off onto something, but especially with staging and stuff, expect that sometimes they're funny, sometimes not, but not everyone has the same
Sense of humor.
sense of humor about things like that. And a darker one I wouldn't put a photo up here was, I went into a house one time, and I'm assuming it was the teenage son. His bedroom was full of swastikas and Nazi memorabilia and stuff. Not everyone's comfortable with that kind of stuff. It's not cool. So perhaps staging would be a conversation to have with people, just to make sure they're not putting in things that are not only creepy but maybe offensive. But that's a personal thing.
Counseling might come in handy.
Yeah, counseling maybe too, but yeah. that was
I
me.
showed one time in the teenage son's room was signs of the devil and stuff.
Yeah.
It was a little creepy.
Yeah. Yeah, I can chuckle about things, but a lot of people can't. And yeah, it could end up causing you some grief, and you're dealing with clients. So anyway, but yeah, so that's all I have. It's just like I said, just a rundown of things, and this will be available for anyone. You can certainly have it and pass it around to anyone that wants. And like I mentioned, if you're ever at a house where you're seeing something, then you're not sure of it. A common one for me is hot water tanks. People look at the dates, and the serial numbers are usually in the date. The date, is usually in the serial number, and sometimes it's year, month, sometimes it's month, year, depends on the brand.
It should have to be all.
It would be lovely if it's
Wouldn't
uniform, but it's not. There's even at least one, if not more, companies that actually has a letter code, so there's no way to know unless you have the code for it.
And that's what happens, I'll look at it every time, because that's always one of the things, I look at oil tanks, I look at the hot water.
Yeah.
And it's like,
Yeah.
What is that?
So if you're looking at one and you don't see it, or you don't understand it, or
Yeah.
you're not sure, is that an 06 or an
Yeah.
07, depending or whatever, just if you don't mind, I don't
Yeah.
mind, take a picture of it, send it to me, ask me what it is. As long as I can see the brand name and the number, I can find it for you.
Mhm.
So, and
Okay.
that could possibly save you some grief. Was this 2001 December, or was it
That's right.
December of as in
yeah,
2012 January?
Yep.
Any questions though while we're still here before I make Jeff do his thing?
What about HRVs? I know you look at those too.
I do, and usually we actually run it across this the other day.
Yes, we
For
did.
the most part, I leave that more to the HRV folks like yourself, but except with the Van Mars, if we see one that looks like it's on the recall list. So there's two different recalls. There's one that's a super simple one where they actually just send you an adapter. You unplug it, you plug your adapter in, and off you go again. And then there's the one that's more complicated, which we almost never come across, thankfully, where it's a motor issue, where they actually send a technician in. The technician does it, fixes the motor, and off you go again. But either way, it's free. But anytime you have a Venmar, there's a chance from a blow. Jeff, do you remember the years? I think it's like 90s to
2006,
2000.
wasn't it?
Something like in that
Yeah.
ballpark, 96 to 2009, somewhere in that range.
Yeah.
If it's in that age range, right, it's what you had for the recall. So if you have a house built in that time frame, or if you have an older house that's been retrofitted, then there's a possibility of a recall one. If you have one, just look for that. And same deal, if you have one that you're not comfortable with, just send that to me and I'll find it for you. And I try to point them out every time.
I had a listing that actually I sold and their inspector didn't pick it up. I was unaware. It's caused a fire 6 months after they were in.
Yeah.
They're just going back in the end of this week. They're actually my neighbors. I replaced mine because it just died anyway when I was doing renovations. So, and Keith said just to be safe, we'll replace it. But all the other neighbors, I put it on our group. in the neighborhood because the next street over, every house had them and nobody knew.
Yeah.
So, anyway, the guy, I told one of the guys on the road and he told everybody and they all got the part.
Yeah.
And it only took like a couple days and the
Oh,
part
yeah,
came.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
just that you go on the website or the toll-free number, and they send it to you, it's pretty quick, and in the meantime, just turn your power off to it, or just turn it down.
Yeah.
And it's thankfully pretty rare, but it can happen clearly, and.
Oh, yeah,
yeah.
they've got a whole new house because of it.
No,
but,
I've seen them like open
yeah.
it up and person say, oh, the HRV's not working, open it up. Put my hand on that and it nearly burned my hand.
Yeah.
That thing was red hot. Like,
Yeah,
You
he
don't
heard,
love
he
that.
heard the crackling, put the baby down for his nap, heard crackling, and anyway, he went right up, I couldn't believe it. Couldn't believe it. And I had the same darn thing, the agent that sold him in, he had the same mark, and nobody was picking it up. Like, so when you picked that up yesterday, I was like, thank you for
Oh,
picking
yeah.
that up,
Well,
because
that's-
now it's very serious.
So what I give you basically is just the website and the email, and just go ahead and take care of it, because it's free, it's
Yeah.
simple, do it and save yourself a house.
Exactly.
you know, usually 20 years, if
question.
you get 20 years out of one, you're doing good.
Yeah, well, I've got a nice new one.
Yeah.
Thanks, Sherry. It's gonna be, you guys are gonna be able to send it out to everyone, is that right?
Yeah, we're gonna send the presentation.
Yeah, and it's gonna be on YouTube as well?
Yes.
Yeah, so you'll be able to get a copy, Sherry, if you want, and also be on YouTube as well. So, I'm finished up, if that's cool, and then Jeff, if you wanna do your thing, I'll just get out of your way. Stop sharing.
Okay.
There, all right. There you go, Jeff. Sure.
You can grab one of those if you like, Jody.
I will.
With you. Hi, folks. My name is Jeff Petit. My company is Advanced Radon Technology. I don't have a digital presentation. You're just going to have to put up with me
Okay.
talking to you. But I do have some information for those that aren't here, that perhaps you can PDF them, or I can PDF
Yeah,
them,
we
email them,
can,
whatever.
Jessica make sure they all get it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I started this company about 5 years ago. I got laid off. I was working in the oil patch for nearly 20 years, got laid off. Wondered what I was going to do with myself. I didn't feel like retiring, wasn't ready. I heard a lady on the radio talking about her husband who died of radon, or died of lung cancer, I mean. Never smoked. And they tested her house, they had high radon levels. So I thought, gee, that might be something I could get into. I'd heard of radon, didn't know really anything about it. So did some research and looked at it. I said, gee, this could be right up my alley, because my background is geology. And when I finished university way back in 1983, I started off in the oil rigs off Sable Island. Did that for a couple of years, then I got into mineral exploration, worked all over Canada. And then in between contracts, it was never steady work, it was just contract work. But in between contracts, I did carpentry work, so I did over 10 years of new home construction and renovation, so I picked that end of things up too. So I was thinking, yeah, it could be a good combination between the technical skills I had from working on the rigs, because that was a technical position mainly, and the carpentry, and I was always writing reports and stuff. So anyway, one thing led to another. I got certified, and here we are today. What I'd like to do is just go over testing, because that's what you folks are involved with your clients. I think everyone, all the realtors have taken some sort of radon training, so you know the basics of it. I don't know if you realize the main place how radon gets into homes typically. People are always surprised. They buy a brand new home and they have high radon, and they don't understand why. Well, the main place radon gets in is where the slab meets the foundation wall. What they do, they pour the foundation, they come in later, pour the slab for the basement. It contracts as the concrete dries. You get a shrinkage crack all around the perimeter. It's never caulked. Finished basement, I can't get at the cocket, nobody can, you know. Radon's coming in there, so that's the main place. Although I see openings and holes in floors, and I know you do too, Jody. You know, if you just look and there's a big hole open, you see gravel, well, that's a radon entry point for sure. But a lot of the time, you just can't see where the radon's coming in.
What about drain pipes? You know, you'll see, sometimes you see drain pipe.
Well, if it's open around the pipe,
Okay.
I always look to see, sometimes you'll see the pipe will be sticking up and it'll be just gravel around it. So then what we do is we seal it with expandable foam, just the can foam, and the radon can't get through that.
And then I'm assuming also the cracks in the foundation.
Yeah, they can get in through the cracks in the foundation. Not so much the floor, because the radon can't get through a vapor barrier.
Okay.
So you see, quite often you see the slab will be cracked, you know, but I don't know, how long ago did they start using vapor barriers, Jody? A long time ago.
It's been a while.
Yeah. So I always check anyway. We have a smoke pen that I light, and after we get the fan installed, I go around and check to see if it's sucking any smoke down, then I put caulking in it. Yeah. Let's talk about the testing, because this can be a little confusing for the real estate transaction. There's two types of tests. As you know, there's a long-term test. Health Canada recommends all homes do a 3-month test. It's the best test because it's the longest test. It's no more accurate or less accurate than a short-term test. It's just more data. That's why Health Canada recommends a 3-month test. For the real estate transaction, and I've included this document here from CARSIS 2018. It's the guideline for conducting radon screening assessment as part of a real estate transaction in residential dwellings, and this is what you need to refer to. What they did was they did a bunch of studies at, I think it was University of Alberta. They tested hundreds of homes and they come up with this document. I was actually on the committee that reviewed it. So what we do is we go in for a real estate transaction. It's a 4-day test. We go in, there is a document that either the person living there, which is usually the seller, or if there's no one there, the realtor will sign, just saying basically they're going to keep the windows closed. You're not supposed to use your dryer, range hood, or any other fans. I always tell folks, if you have to use a dryer, use it. You know, if you use the bathroom fans, turn them off when you're done. Same with the range hood. But there is a document that we have to get signed, and it's quite a lengthy document. I didn't bring a copy here with me today, but I can send it out to anyone that would like to have it. So with the real estate transaction, they broke it down into green, yellow, and red. And this is where it got a little confusing for some people. Is the green, let me back up a little bit. Radon levels are typically higher in the wintertime than they are in the summer. And the main reason for that is what they call stack effect. So as you heat your home, typically the heat comes up in the basement, it goes out through all the windows and all the cracks. And to equalize that pressure in the home, more air comes in through the basement, through every crack and opening, and brings more radon in with it. Also, your windows are closed in the wintertime. The ground's frozen, the radon can't seep up through the ground. So what they did was, for a green test, it's anything less than 75 becquerels per cubic meter in the winter and 50 in the summer. So if we do a test and it comes back 75 in the winter, 50 in the summer, it's a green. It's a green test. That doesn't mean that there's not a chance of having high radon levels in the winter. So Health Canada recommends do the 3-month test, which they recommend for all the color tests. So for the yellow test, it's greater than 75 in the winter and 50 becquerels in the summer, up to and including 400 becquerels. And this is where it gets a little confusing, because the Health Canada action level for mitigation is 200. But the reason they put that the 400 in is that after they did a bunch of testing on all these homes, they found that sometimes, even if you do a short-term test at 400, and it could be lower if you do the 3-month test in the wintertime. I think I've only run into 1 or 2 home buyers that didn't want to install a mitigation system if they tested over 200 on a short-term test. They want to buy the home, they want it fixed before they move in. And it's you know, for us to go in there, it's an easy fix, 3 or 4 hour job. We follow up, do the 4-day test afterwards, good to go. The red test is any test higher than 400 becquerels. And even with the red test, the actionable results, what they recommend is a 400 or red test indicates there's a strong possibility that radon remediation may be warranted, and consideration should be made for a follow-up long-term test. They recommend that with everyone.
So there's a question here, how much
Yes.
approximate cost to fix? Depend on the size of the house?
No, not so much. What we do is we go in and we go in, like I'll go in and I'll do a consultation, a free consultation before we do install the system, have a good look, see if I can see any radon openings or how to exhaust it outdoors. The average cost is $1,600 plus tax.
It's not bad.
So it's not a lot of money. I mean, I guess it's easy for me to say, but I mean, compared to a bad septic or, as you know, or a bad well. And yeah, I'll get into the mitigation end of it here shortly, but any more questions with regard to the testing?
That's it?
That's basically it. I mean, I've had lots of people call me and say, what do I do? We tested 300 on the 4-day test. Well, I say, well, it's up to you what you want to do. Health Canada and Karst recommend you do the 3-month test, put the money in escrow, but well, like I say, I've only seen it a couple times, and probably the same with you,
Yeah.
that people just don't want it fixed. Pretty much all homes can be fixed, and I say pretty much. If some of these old homes, like 100+ years, they have a dirt floor. We can't install these sub-slab depressurization systems because we need to be able to create negative pressure, and it's obviously the radon's coming in right up through the dirt. So what we have to do then is go in and put down a radon barrier, heavy-duty poly barrier, attach it to the foundation wall with battens, concrete screws, and caulking. It can turn into quite a big job, especially if there's lots of posts that you have to seal around. It can still be done,
Yeah.
but it really adds to the cost.
Would you find it worse, like, you know how new homes are so airtight and like century homes are like air's
Yeah.
flowing in and out? Would the radon leave the older home quicker than the new?
Yeah, no, that's a good point. Yeah, these old homes breathe pretty good. You know?
Yeah.
These new homes are so tight.
Yeah.
You know, and especially if the HRV, I mean, HRVs are great, they're standard procedure now
Yeah.
in new homes, but quite often they aren't balanced, so that's something we also do, is we go in and check the unit if they've got the balancing ports on them, to make sure that airflow leaving the home is the same as coming in, because if there's more air leaving the home than coming in, you can create negative pressure, and you're going to be bringing in more radon. But they can help reduce radon considerably, like I've seen it 50% or even more.
Yep.
So.
Lynette had a question. How does the testing work that some inspectors that are only hooked up for a
Yeah.
couple of minutes?
Yes.
Yeah, there's a new one that they're only doing a few minutes.
I'm glad you asked, because
Yeah.
I was going to talk about that. There are quite a few inspectors out there that aren't certified for radon testing, and they just go to Home Depot and they buy a test. And I've had so many people call me and say, oh, I've got high radon levels, and realtors too.
Yeah.
I said, so how long did they test for? Oh, 2 hours.
Oh.
1 hour, 4 or 5. No, it's no good.
No.
Radon levels fluctuate, on a day, hourly basis even.
Yeah.
So, no, you really need to get someone that's certified through CNRPP, Canadian National Radon Proficiency Program, or CARS, the Canadian Association of Radon Scientists and Technologists,
Yeah.
to do the testing, because there are placements important, the protocol. Our units, our machines that we use, they have to be calibrated annually.
Mhm.
They're $2,000 machines, so, and they're tamper-proof too. If they're moved, we can tell.
So if someone buys a new build and the builder says it's roughed in for radon, So what do you come to do? Would it be less costly than one that you have to rough in?
No, it's gonna be the same cost, because I tell you, 90% of these homes we go into that have the rough-in pipe, and since 2010, it's been in the Canadian Building Code to have the rough-in radon pipe. 90% of the places we go in, it's not accessible. It's under the stairs, halfway into the wall, coming out of the wall at a 45 degree, or out of the floor at an angle. These guys, I blame it on the building inspectors for not, as long as they see it coming up through the floor anywhere, they're okay with it.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes they're right down through the gravel into the dirt, so we can't draw on them anyway, even if we can access them. They should just go down. Typically you have your dirt, then 4 inches of gravel, then vapor barrier, then about 4 inches of concrete. So that rough-in is supposed to stick into that gravel, you know, say into the gravel a couple of inches or so, but it's not often we can use them. If we do use them, typically what we have to do is add a bunch of elbows to get it away from the wall, get it over. We try to limit the amount of piping we have on these systems, because the more piping and more elbows we put on, the more air resistance and less effective they are to draw air and reduce the radon.
Good to know.
So yeah, what we do, any more questions on the testing?
So what are the hot spots in this? We have a lot of new agents on, so maybe if you can
Okay.
speak to the hot spots in HRM for radon.
Oh, Spryfield's a hot spot. Governor's Brook out there, boy, that is some of the highest radon levels I have seen anywhere up. I've seen levels up to 5,000 becquerels out there.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's bad.
Timberley, Hubli, Upper Tantalon. The thing with radon is, and this is why Health Canada recommends everybody do a test, is that you could have high levels and your next door neighbor could have low levels. The radon map is a great tool, but it's just a approximation, it's just a potential. And I've had people, say to me, no, I looked at my place on the radon map, well, 2 streets over, they have high radon, but our street looks okay. Well, yeah, it might be, but you need to do a test.
Mm-hmm.
The radon map is comprehensive. The Natural Resources did a great job making it. What they did was over the years, they've mapped all the bedrock geology in Nova Scotia, so they know all the bedrock geology, they know all the surface soil geology, and the whole province was flown with gamma ray geophysical tools, so they know, the hot spots. So it is a good tool to look to see if you're in a high potential area, but everybody needs to test.
There's a question, how much is the radon test if you do it? So how much to check?
$250 plus tax in HRM. We work all over the province from Cape Breton to Yarmouth, so it's more. 90% of the work we do is in HRM. Yeah. So yeah, what we do, I go in and I do a consultation if somebody calls me up or you call me up and look it over. Discuss with the client where they'd like to see it put, show them some pictures of what it's going to look like, because a lot of people have no idea what, some people think we've got to dig up the whole basement or whatever. What we do is we go in, we core a 4-inch hole in the floor, dig out or suck out with a big shop vac, 5-gallon bucket of gravel, create a sump. And that's the key to these systems working effectively, is having that permeability in that soil or gravel so you can draw air through it. So we make a sump, and then I've got a flow meter station. It's a 4-inch PVC pipe with a diaphragm in it. We stick that in that 4-inch hole, and then I go to a furthest point away from that 4-inch hole to drill a small test hole, just a 3/8 inch test hole size your baby finger, to get on the other side of a bearing wall, just in case there's a footing beneath that'll block airflow. It's rare, but we do run into it. And then hook a shop vac up to the flow meter station, turn it on to simulate a radon fan. And then I've got a little tool called a manometer. We check for soil resistance and also go over to that test hole and check for airflow. And then I've got a program on my laptop. I put some numbers in. That's going to tell us first if it's going to work, and second, the fan size we need to install. We don't want to oversize the fan. It's not going to lower the radon levels any more than the proper size fan. And I think that's, well, I know that's what puts our company ahead of these, some other companies, is that we use the science. Some companies just go in, I call it the poke and hope. They just poke a hole in the floor and put a big fan in and hope it's going to work. And then after we do the installation, we set up another 4-day test that same day. And then we're going to know, I'll come back, pick it up, we're going to know the levels have been significantly reduced. Typically we can get the levels get down below 50 becquerels, quite often single digits. And then I provide a report with it.
Good to know.
Yeah.
Yeah. I had a well guy tell me that if he sees high uranium, he says to people to test for radon.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, that's what it comes from, the breakdown of uranium
Yeah.
minerals in soil. Yeah.
Are you finding with the seller's market less people doing their radon test? Like, I had a run on where everybody wanted to do one, and now people are, of course, we have the waving situation, so it's a worry. Are you finding that?
Yeah, I haven't been doing a lot of tests.
Yeah.
I haven't, I bet only 2 or 3 a month maybe, but lots of mitigations.
Yes.
Because they're doing them after the fact and then they're.
Yeah, and a lot of people are doing the long-term tests,
Yeah.
the 3-month tests. So this is the time of year where they're just getting the results back from their winter test. So I expect things are gonna be picking up here again.
I know I have to practice what I preach, because I preach it to my clients, but I haven't done it for them. I've done my own house. So, you know what I mean?
No, yeah, I've run into a few realtors that said they should test their own house. And, well, where do you live?
I live in Keystone.
Where, sorry?
Keystone, Montebello area,
Oh,
right
yeah.
off the Waverly Road.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's quite a few jobs out in that area.
So there's some there.
Well, I
Well-
heard one of my neighbors had it, but usually there's not.
There's radon everywhere.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Even outdoors.
Yeah.
You know, they say the average level outdoors is around 16 becquerels, and, you know, fairly often we can get it down below that. So I love telling people they have less radon in their home than they do in their backyard.
Yeah.
But no, people think they can get it down to 0, but well, we've actually had a couple down to 1, which I've been amazed. But yeah, there's radon everywhere all the time. It's just a matter of how much.
Yeah. No, well, good to know. Anyone on Zoom have a question?
See if I understand.
Nope,
Oh,
all
no.
of mine have been answered. It's awesome.
I also included here what I call our fan optimization procedure. It's just a summary of what we do to decide the fan size. And it also includes the costs for power for the fans.
Mm-hmm.
I've only got 3. There's actually a larger one now. They start at 20 watts, and most of the installations you do are either 20 or 60 watt fans. They're quite quiet. They don't cost a lot to run, you know, $30 a year for the small one. But there's the largest fan's 170 watts. It's loud and it's expensive, but sometimes it's just a last resort.
And that says, what does the remediation system do and how? By fan inside the system? Question.
Well, the way they work, they're called sub-slab depressurization systems, because what we do after we core that 4-inch hole in the floor, we put a PVC pipe in, and we go out through either the wall, if it's not a foundation wall, although sometimes we have to core through the foundation wall, but typically through the studded wall or up through the rib joist, and then plug the fan in. So the fan is drawing air from beneath the slab with that negative pressure it's creating, and exhausting it outdoors before radon can get into the home. It's a simple procedure, really.
Yeah.
If there's good gravel there, and it's not only good gravel, as long as there's no obstructions beneath the footings. And I've seen brand new homes too where we've had a hard time installing a system without using a really big fan, because I don't know what they've done underneath. We can't see it obviously, but I don't know if they've come in and just dumped some extra cement, extra, you know, leftover from the truck. Just, you know, the contractors aren't thinking about radon. But yeah, the systems they're effective. People are happy. A lot of times folks find their basements smell better right away.
Yeah.
They do remove a lot of moisture from beneath the floor, and a lot of folks find they don't need dehumidifiers anymore in the summertime.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah.
You know. Yeah.
Yeah.
Lynette wants to know, should it be checked every year to ensure it's still working okay, and maintenance?
Well, that's a good question. There's no maintenance required with them. What we do is we always include a long-term test kit. So we do the short-term test after we install the system, 4-day test. We know the system's working well. We include the long-term test kit for the follow-up 3-month test next winter. So once you do that long-term test and it comes back low, you don't need to test anymore. Not unless you do more construction in the basement and poke more holes in the slab. You don't need to test again.
Yeah.
And we also service, I should mention the HRVs too. We also service those. We clean the filters and inside the unit, and also the screen outside, which is quite plugged, usually plugged off.
Yeah.
A lot of folks clean the screens inside the unit. A lot of folks don't too. But there is a screen outside for the fresh air intake that can get plugged right off with dirt. And if they're plugged off, you're just not getting any fresh air into the home.
That's good. That's good to know that you service those, because oftentimes we have a listing where we have to get that service.
Yeah, we install them too. I kind of get out of that a little bit. I usually refer the bigger jobs to my colleague Dennis Harding, Carefree Properties. He's more of an HRV installer, but we still do some.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good.
But yeah, if you get 20 years out of one, usually that's pretty good.
Mm-hmm. Anyone else for questions?
Let's see what I missed here. Oh yeah, there is a U-tube we put on them, and I know you've seen them, that little tube with the red fluid in it. That just says that there's suction on the fan. That lets you know that the fan is operating if you can't hear it running, because these two smaller fans, usually we put the system in a utility room, so there's HRVs running, the furnace might be running, you're not going to hear the fan, but you can tell by looking at the U-tube if the fluid's up on one side that the fan's operational.
Great.
Yeah.
Well, I guess that's it for today. Well, thanks for coming in. This
Thanks for
really,
having
this is
me.
really informative.
Both of you, very, very much.
Thanks for
Yeah,
having
very
me.
good, very
Great.
good. Yeah,
That was wonderful.
yeah,
Oh, thanks.
yeah. Thank you all on Zoom.
Thanks for joining, guys, really appreciate
Yeah,
it.
really appreciate it.
Have a great day, enjoy the sunshine.
Yes,
Yeah.
enjoy your day.
Enjoy while we can. It's going to be
Right.
ugly the rest of the week.
Yeah, it's gonna be double digits. Everybody enjoy. Get your
Yeah.
vitamin D.
Yeah.
To do with the,
This is the first time I've been down in this little area. It's
Oh, really? It's
the
cute,
park
isn't it?
over there. The kids are running around. It's happening.
You know what to do with the computer.
I'm gonna stop recording.